Dishonored series is one of the most beloved immersive sims ever made, but here's the paradox. Despite all that praise, Dishonored never broke into the mainstream like the most popular stealth game, Assassin's Creed. But critics praised it, fans adored it, and Arcane's studio built their entire reputation on its unique blend of stealth, freedom, and supernatural powers. It sold okay, but never did blockbuster numbers. And in 2024, 3 years after Microsoft acquired them, half of their studios were shut down for good. So what went wrong? How do you go from making some of the most acclaimed games of the decade to basically getting erased? I'd never played a Dishonored game before this video, so I decided to binge the entire series to finally understand why people love these games so much, and why they couldn't save Arcane in the end. Dishonored started as Arcane's impossible dream, inspired by games like Thief, BioShock, and Deus Ex. But it was also a massive gamble, an immersive sim in an industry obsessed with first-person shooters and open worlds. But for a moment, it felt like they had changed the future of the genre. So let's go back to 2012 to see where Dishonored really began. The gaming industry was in a strange place. Call of Duty was dominating sales charts, Skyrim had just redefined open worlds, and the phrase immersive sim was basically dead outside of niche PC circles. But the year before, Deus Ex: Human Revolution had surprised everyone by selling over 2 million copies in its first month, proving there was still an audience for these systems-driven stealth games. And Arcane saw their chance. They weren't chasing Call of Duty numbers, they were chasing that Deus Ex crowd, the people who craved freedom, choice, and creativity in how they took on missions. And they'd finally get the opportunity to show just what they're made of in 2012 with the release of Dishonored. On paper, it was just a first-person stealth action game with some supernatural flair to it, but in practice, Dishonored was one of the most faithfully made immersive sims of all time. A game genre built on player choice and agency instead of scripted cutscenes and predetermined paths. You play as Corvo Attano, bodyguard to the Empress of Dunwall, but within the game's opening minutes, everything falls apart. The Empress gets assassinated right in front of you, but low-key, you were cooking those assassins until one of them hit you with some Harry Potter shit. See, this was all a setup to destabilize the politics of Dunwall and to kidnap the only heir to the throne, Emily. And Corvo was simply the easiest person to frame for the whole thing. This set the tone for the story where the entire world turns on you like a pack of starving dogs on meat. And what a world it is. Dunwall is unlike any other video game city I've ever played in. It's a plague-stricken Victorian industrial city powered by whale oil and ruled now by a corrupt aristocracy. The rich hold masquerade balls and glittering estates, while the poor choke on plague fumes and get ripped apart by waves of infected rats. It's not realistic by any means. Arcane took heavy inspiration from both historical art from the Victorian era, as well as from games like Half-Life 2 and BioShock. From there, the story unfolds in a classic revenge plot fashion. You're broken out of prison by a group calling themselves the Loyalists, who basically want you to be their attack dog in taking down the conspirators behind the coup. With their help and eventually the aid of the mysterious outsider who gives you your magical abilities, Corvo sets out to get the get back and to rescue Emily. But where Dishonored stood apart for me was in how it really let you complete your missions your way. Every single mission gave you the freedom to solve problems in wildly different ways. If you're more the murdery assassin type, you can get away by just literally killing everyone. But if you take the pleasure in pretending to be Batman, you can stealthily complete every mission without killing anyone. Then there's me, where I tried to go good guy mode, but it goes horribly wrong and everyone ends up dead. This is all backed up by what Dishonored calls the chaos system. If you play the stealthy route, the plague in the city will move slower, the world will stabilize a bit more, and Emily's future is much brighter for the city she will eventually lead. Play like I did, where you choose to butcher the entirety of the city, the plague starts to consume Dunwall, the city falls into decay, and Emily's world darkens. This system makes you question if leaving bodies behind for an easier solution, or taking the harder path of trying to clean up Dunwall was a superior choice of action. The tension introduced from the chaos system and the effects it had on the world around you was masterfully done in my opinion. You get to see the results of every action you take in the game by the next mission. Now, Arcane didn't just rely on these interesting systems, no. They also introduced some of the coolest powers ever in a first-person game. They gave you Blink, a short-range teleport which almost gave you infinite possibilities. I typically used it defensively to get out of line of sight of the guards, or to reach high places to retain my stealth. But occasionally I used it to teleport behind someone and deliver the meanest neck slash in human history. This was just one of many many powers. Powers such as possession, time bending, or even the ability to summon a plague of fucking rats called Devouring Swarm to just eat people. These extra mechanics added that much depth to the ways you could handle missions. It made Dishonored more than just a stealth action adventure. It made the game really value your creativity as a player in a way that very few games ever have. So when you put it all together, the plague-ridden city, the revenge story, the godlike powers, and the freedom to use them however you wanted, it's no real surprise that both fans and critics adored the game. But still, commercially, it really just sold well enough to justify a sequel. But it wasn't some sort of blockbuster, steam-breaking kind of game. See, if you know anything about games from the early 2000s, it's that every single major release needed a mobile tie-in of some sort for whatever reason. That's exactly what we got with the highly anticipated Rat Assassin. Released in 2012, accompanying Dishonored as a free iOS game, Rat Assassin was pretty much as a marketing campaign for the Dishonored game, but it did have enjoyable enough gameplay, mostly because it bit the entire game from Fruit Ninja, just replaced the fruits with waves of plague rats. Now, there was one major issue with this game that Fruit Ninja didn't have. Fruits are not living creatures. In hindsight, slicing through rat guts is probably not the best for a mobile audience that was mostly younger aged people. Most of you guys either never heard of this game, or maybe you played it for like 5 minutes, but it wasn't ever successful by any means, and it got shut down shortly after launch, probably due to the aforementioned animal murderization issues. Mobile games are so strange sometimes. Thankfully, Arcane's real ambitions weren't with mobile gaming. Their focus was on the sequel, Dishonored 2, which aimed to try and follow up a masterpiece and push it even further. But there was one problem. They couldn't quite hit the nail on the head with the second game. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great game, but compared to the first game, the story and the setting just weren't nearly as interesting to me. In the first game, we're in the dark, plague-ridden town of Dunwall, but in the second game, we get kicked out shortly after the game starts to the town of Karnaca, and this city was honestly breathtaking. But does it actually fit the vibes of what the mask meant to players? Going from the butcher of Dunwall to the tourist of Clockwork Italy doesn't quite hit the same for me, but many fans do seem to enjoy Karnaca's aesthetics. The main core issue with the game, like I said, was the story. In the second game, the TLDR is that Emily has now become a neglectful empress of Dunwall. Her long-lost aunt Delilah, the rightful heir to the throne, shows up and gives Emily's daddy Corvo the Han Solo treatment, and then you run away. Compare that to the Dishonored 1 plotline, where you're the Empress's head protector and head sneaky Link, where you play hide and seek with little Emily, and then the Empress is assassinated right in front of you after you failed to stop it, only for it to then be pinned on you and for Emily to be kidnapped. When playing through these games, my personal issue is that the second game didn't do enough narratively different from the first game to be that bigger than life hit. Despite myself enjoying the game quite a lot with new mechanics introduced, and the ability to play as either Corvo or Emily, I think a much more interesting angle to the story would have been playing as someone completely unrelated directly to the first game. Imagine if instead we play as a man who is a neglected citizen of Dunwall under Emily's rule. He joins up with Delilah to usurp the throne from Emily, only to realize just how bad of a person Delilah really was, and our story starts there. I think the choice to stick with the same characters maybe wasn't the best idea, despite it being the safest. I'd also like to state that the decision to swap to a voiced protagonist, while not ruining the experience, I don't think it particularly added to the experience given the story alongside it wasn't super strong. But while the game did have its flaws, there are many great improvements in the second entry to the series. Now obviously a sequel is going to have better graphics typically, but it also introduced some really amazing levels. Some that stood out to me were the Clockwork Mansion and the Asylum. Each level was larger and more complex than its predecessor, but the Clockwork Mansion in particular was really well done. The ability to change the mansion itself around with the different levers made for a really unique experience that required high levels of problem solving to get through. Another great thing this game had was the sheer customizability of your character's playstyle. Starting with the choice of 2 protagonists with completely different sets of abilities was already great, but then also adding the ability to craft custom bone charms, even more abilities, and New Game Plus really expanded from the first entry. If Dishonored 2 was truly just set in Karnaca, I think the game would have scored like 9 out of 10, if not higher. But since we get shipped back to Dunwall at the end of the game to close this boring plotline with Delilah, it takes away from the experience that was so perfect in Karnaca. And speaking of being set mainly in Karnaca, the third and final entry to the Dishonored franchise, Death of the Outsider, is set here, where we play as Billy Lurk on the mission to end the life of, well, the Outsider, which I realize I haven't really talked about in this video yet, strangely enough. Well, for those who are familiar, the Outsider is a supernatural being who was sacrificed as a boy to the void by an ancient cult. He's also the source of all magic in the world. The reason we are looking to actually kill the outsider is to stop the chaos caused by the misuse of his powers granted to people such as Corvo Atana and Delilah, to name a few. His neutrality and outright refusal to intervene despite knowing the destructive nature and capabilities of the powers drive Billy Lurk, Dowd, her mentor, to believe that the only logical way to gain control over the chaotic forces and create a better future is to actually kill him. But unfortunately, the game just didn't have any of the scope, level design, or gameplay that the two previous titles had. This should have stayed a DLC for Dishonored 2. So that we got that out of the way, let's talk numbers. Dishonored 2 didn't sell amazingly. Definitely not bad, but not AAA standards at all. And in this game, Dodo, as we'll call it, was a spin-off with a DLC feel of this game. It also released in 2017 during the pre-Christmas months, and this year was quite stacked for a spin-off to try and do well. We had games like Persona 5, Breath of the Wild, Resident Evil 7, and Super Mario Odyssey, and even another game developed by an Arcane Studios branch, Prey. On top of all of that, at this point, the immersive sim genre was all but dead minus a few entries. And speaking of dead, unfortunately after the release of Dodo in 2017, it would effectively mark the indefinite hiatus of the Dishonored franchise. While later released Deathloop is in the same world, I don't really count it given how different it is. In playing through these games, it led me to a question I didn't even realize I'd need answered. Why did the immersive sim genre die and effectively not receive another proper solid entry since Prey in 2017? Well, I have a few theories. As with all games, it's a business at the end of the day. So I'd say it might just come down to money. When you think about the immersive sim, you begin to realize some things. Is that they are open world, but they are a special kind, where it's very complex, dense, and vertical. They have multiple paths to get to the same location, and have to consider all of this when designing the architecture for the game world. Compare this to something like Skyrim, per se, where it's building here, building there, bridge here, repeat. There's no real complexity to the actual world design itself. There's a path or two sometimes to get where you need to, or a horse verticaling up a mountain in Skyrim's case. Another important thing is that immersive sims typically feature branching narratives to reflect player choice, which is already inherently hard to pull off, with either world-class writing talent needed to write that, or a lot of time for the average game writers to get it done. These two issues really project the idea of the cost of risk to reward for game studios to manage when making a game. So the rundown is basically, they don't make enough money to justify backers wanting to have these games produced, not when an action, adventure, open world, or Souls-like game can get crazy sales with much less resources put in. I've had a lot of fun playing through Dishonored for the first time. While it's definitely not the greatest games I've ever played, I did really appreciate the respect of the player's intelligence and decision making this genre has to offer. With this being said, I think Dishonored 1 was actually my favorite of the series, though Dishonored 2 is pretty close. If you'd like to help vote on what game series I play next, see early access snippets of every video, and support me in going full-time as a content creator, then check out my Patreon, links in the pinned comment. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next episode of the I Played Every Game series.